So the first thing is, how do you find opportunity in a crisis? Or how do you find purpose in a pandemic, right? So when you think about what we've gone over the last year and a half, there's a thing called a significant emotional event. And a significant emotional event is an event that happens in your life that will change your world. It'll rock your world. It will change your value system, right? Some examples of a significant emotional event are things such as job loss, death of a loved one, dire sickness of yourself or a loved one, divorce, loss of a lot of money, loss of a home, a serious injury. Sometimes the birth of a child can do that. Sometimes marriage can do that. Sometimes a child leaving home can be a significant emotional event if the parents have not prepared for it and they don't want them to go. Working from home can be a significant emotional event. There was a lady that I was coaching, and she was very successful, never failed at anything in her life. And she had a very good career in the reserves, and she had another good career with the government. But when the pandemic hit, she came home to work from home. Her husband came to work from home. And both of her kids, aged 5 and 7, came home. So that was a significant emotional event for her, and she almost lost it because it had disrupted her routine, and she was a social person. So when you think about what we've gone through over the last year and a half, I call it a significant emotional event on steroids, because several people, no matter what economic, educational range they are, have had multiple significant emotional events at the same time. Some people have lost jobs and lost loved ones at the same time, right? In any combination, marriage, divorce. So there's a lot of that that's been going on for the last year and a half, okay? But you can also find opportunity in a crisis. When the pandemic hit, if you happen to be a person who could make a mask and you had a sewing machine, you could make a pretty good living, right? If you happen to be in the food business, the right food business, okay? What's the right food business? The right food business is Chick-fil-A. They pivoted on the drive-in. Their business is up 30 or 40%. Other restaurants are dead in the water, right? So they were able to pivot and find the opportunities in that opportunity and what was going on. Now, the other thing that can be a significant emotional event is someone who retires and doesn't have a plan. So I'll give you a couple of examples of what can be done and lessons that I learned over time. When I was at the Naval Academy as a plebe, going through plebe summer, and there's this thing called Parents Weekend. So Parents Weekend, your parents come, you spend about 2 or 3 days with them, you haven't seen them in 2 months, and then that day comes where they go back, your girlfriend goes back, and you're there by yourself, okay? Now, so you're pretty sad. So one of the things that the upper class would do is they would come in your room and just disrupt it, tear it up, to take your mind off of what you were thinking about. And then once it was disrupted, you had to focus. You had to develop a plan. You had to keep working. You know, so that was something that I learned at a very young age at the Naval Academy on how to make order out of chaos. And one of the things that I learned while I was at the Naval Academy, I was not a scholar. Okay, I graduated. My goal when I was there was 2 things: graduate on time and not have to go to summer school. That was my goal, and I accomplished that goal. So what I did while I was there was I took it a day at a time. And I can remember there's a guy that was the president of Michelin Tire in North America. He was a 77 graduate of West Point, and he was 4th generation. And I can remember talking to him after I got out, and 30, 40 years after I got out, and I was telling him about, I used to have these dreams about not graduating from the Naval Academy. And he said, "Oh, that's a common dream for Service Academy graduates." I said, "Oh, okay, I feel a little bit better." So in the military, one of the things that you learn from boot camp, from the beginning of boot camp, is how to make order out of chaos. in the Marine Corps. So the first thing you do is you assess the situation. Then you make a plan and you execute that plan. And that's the same thing that needs to be done in the pandemic for anybody that's been in the pandemic or a significant emotional event. So there are three things that I think are very, very important if you are experiencing a significant emotional event. The first thing, you got to work on your mind. You have to have a positive mindset, because where your mind goes, your body will follow. A positive mindset. So for me, when I was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma about 11 years ago, and the devil was saying a bunch of negative stuff in my head, I had to figure out a way to take the negative stuff that was in my head and remove it. And the only way I know how to do that is to replace it with positive things. I used to recite scripture. I would listen to motivational talks. I would listen to positive sermons, but I would do something to get some positive affirmations in my head. That's the only way I know. So I used to walk while I was going through my cancer journey. I walked, and while I was walking, I would recite 3 scriptures or have some music on, some positive affirmations or something like that. So having a positive mindset is the most important thing. And aviators will tell you that your altitude is determined by your attitude. So that's the first thing, is to get the mind right. The second thing is to develop a routine. One of the things that happens with a significant emotional event, and I'll use the pandemic as an example, people used to go into work, exercising, spending time with the family. They had a routine. COVID hits, routine disrupted, right? Now here's a stat. Do you know how much weight the average person has gained since the pandemic? About 30 pounds.
So Carl, I remember, I guess about probably 8 months ago, quoting what at that time was the version of the number. And at that point, I think it was around 10 pounds. So that's gone up, right? And that's been an upward curve on that one. 30 pounds?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's I mean, it does a lot. So the routine's been disrupted. So people are at the house, they're eating what they don't need to eat, and it's just not healthy. And the other thing about this thing is you've got young people, 15 months or younger, that have not had a whole lot of physical touch. And we're going to see the residual of what's happened over the last year and a half for years and years and years, right? So developing a routine is important. I believe that your routine ought to be what time you ought to know what time you're going to get up, what time you're going to eat, when you're going to exercise, what you're going to do in the day, right? When you're going to go to bed, and all that stuff, in my opinion, ought to be blocked out. Now, I learned at the Naval Academy while I was playing football. When I was doing football season, my schedule was very, very, very tight. And I found out that my grades were about the same during football season when it wasn't football season. When it wasn't football season, I sit around and create stuff, and I didn't study anymore. So having a routine is so important. And I believe you have a routine, even if you have a routine and the routine is blanked out and says, I'm gonna have playtime. Okay, so you got an hour of playtime to do whatever you want to do. But if you don't have it blocked out, high probability it won't happen. Time is the only thing we don't get more of. Everybody gets the same thing, 24 hours a day. So what are you going to do with that 24 hours? That's the key thing. So developing a routine is critical. Now, I believe there are 3 things that are important. You got to eat right, sleep, get enough sleep, and exercise. So no matter what's going on in my life, I try to make sure that I do those things. Now, sleep, rest is different than going to bed. There's a lot of people that are in the bed, but their minds are racing, which means they're not resting. Exercise helps me rest. I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I go to the gym at 5. If I'm swimming twice a week, I swim from 5:30 to 6:30, an hour and a half. Then I start my day, right? I do my thing. And by the time I try to get into bed by 10 o'clock, and I rest very, very well. I'm ready to go the next day, okay? So developing a routine is very, very critical. And then the last thing is you have to have a vision of where you want to go. You know, with the pandemic, a lot of people's lives have been changed. So because of the pandemic, I would say you get your mind right, develop a routine, and then you reassess where you are and determine where you want to go. Depending on where you want to go, you develop some strategies. Okay, let's say you want to get another job, you want to change careers or whatever. Pandemic comes, your business is shut down, you got to do something to make some income. Okay, so that's the vision, is to make some income. Okay, so what's your strategy? One strategy might be work for a nonprofit, get some exposure. Another strategy might mean spending a lot of time on the internet, on LinkedIn. Another strategy might be developing some Zoom calls. You know, it doesn't make any difference what it is. You develop some strategies to get you there. And then you take the number one strategy that you think is the best opportunity, and you create a plan, an action plan, so that you know on a daily basis that when you're doing that, it will get you closer to where you want to go ultimately. So those are the key things I think that are important, not only with a pandemic, but anytime you go through a significant emotional event.